the one and only Leo Biaz. Hey, Leo.
I'm excited to be back, my man. It was 9 days in Vegas. We got stuck in the desert, and we had a little hangover remix out there, man.
I wore a wig to school once, and they said no headgear was allowed.
How did
spider web
was it
tights.
obvious that it was a wig?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was
It was
having
a terrible
fun.
wig.
See, this is exactly why we have them on the show, and this is what makes them fun.
You're listening to KXVS, the voice of Stockton, 92.1 FM.
This is Darius Oliver, and you're listening to 92.1 KXVS, the voice of Stockton.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of KXVS, the voice of Stockton, or its parents, affiliates, management, and staff.
The voice of San Joaquin and the voice of Stockton presents Connections, Peace and Justice Radio, with your host, Bruce Judici.
And good evening. It is just after Thanksgiving, and we are very thankful to be here. I'm Bruce Judici, editor of Connections and host of this show, along with Ava Simpson, who is gamefully accompanying me on this traipse through Connections, the new one that we just put to bed, the December-January edition. And as you probably know, Ava is the layout person for Connections and does all sorts of other things in the community. So welcome, Ava.
Thank you.
Thank you. So anyway, we're just going to start looking right through Connections. I wanted to mention, though, that this weekend, this coming up Friday and Saturday, is the Peaceful Holiday Fair. It's the 31st annual Peaceful Holiday Fair, which is a great fundraiser for the Peace and Justice Network that sponsors Connections and also this radio station. And we are going to be over at Central United Methodist Church, as always, on the weekend after Thanksgiving. Friday, November 30th from 4 to 9. And then Saturday, December 1st, the following day, from 10 to 4. It's a little bit longer than normal. We have gone 10 to 2, but we found that there's a lot of folks still around at 2 o'clock, so we wanted to extend it till 4 o'clock. And so we have a great entertainment schedule set up for that day and a bunch of vendors. And so what we can do is talk now about our entertainment schedule and then get into the paper and then talk about the vendors that we have coming up. So anyway, so we're looking down the entertainment schedule and the folks who we have on Friday. And so you can pick this up at, you can see this on any of your Connections. It is looking like this. It has a orange or reddish theme, and it'll say the headline will be 30 years since the Cleveland school shooting, which we'll get into in a little bit. There's going to be a commemoration in January. And so for the entertainment, maybe, Ava, you can read off the folks who we're going to be having on Friday. And it's quite a full lineup. And, you know, this is the first time where we've actually listed out the entertainment on the Peaceful Holiday Fair. And so it's a really nice list of local folks.
Okay, I can go ahead. I don't
Please.
get to take any responsibility for recruiting these. That would be Joy.
Joy Hope, yes.
Joy Hope that did that.
And she plays with a couple of the groups, and I'm actually on this list too.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I know the first one coming up on Friday afternoon. It's David Perry Molina, and we know him here from the station, and he does some Tuesday night things over at Werlow's too.
Oh, yeah.
David's a good guy.
And that's at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday.
And most of these are half-hour
Yeah.
segments. And then the next one is right at 4:30, and it's Mom's Chili Boys. Don, if we want to...
And they're made up of Tony Kolafa, Sam Venable, Jim Marsh, and Tom Sharkey. All the descriptions of all the groups are on page 18.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
fine.
so the Mom's Chili Boys, and they're it's a nice group, and they get a whole hour since there's 4 of them.
There you go. That's right.
Yeah.
And then at 5:30 to 6, we have City Tappers Tap Dancers. And I've seen these women before, and they're fun. They started doing it by taking lessons, and now they perform at different fairs and
Yeah, it says they've been doing it since 2002. That's a long time.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of my I think Glenda Burns, who's also an artist. I think she's
Right on.
one of those.
Yeah, she's a vendor too.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
But they're pretty fun. Then at 6 to 7 p.m. we have Gypsy Flair Middle Eastern Music Ensemble, and I think that's who I think is featured in the picture below.
Right.
That and.
That has a belly dancer and some a violinist, a drummer, and an oboe player, and they were there last year, and they were quite a hit. They were really exciting and fun to watch, and good musicians too.
And yet good music for a venue like this where it doesn't overpower too. It's and then at 7 to 7:30 we've got Anisha Hibdon. She'll be playing the Finnish Kantele.
And that's similar to it's not really an auto harp, but you ought to come and just see the instrument. It's a different type of instrument, and it's really a nice sound.
Oh, and then we have Bruce.
Oh yes.
Oh my gosh.
Bruce Judici playing trombone, which is also a nice instrument that has been played for years.
So that's
for me. Well, I guess for me too. Yeah.
So that's 7:30 to 8 on Friday night.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
And Bruce plays in a lot of bands. I've gone to see him now twice.
Yeah.
And
we'll be playing Christmas music in this thing.
This one.
Or holiday music, I should say.
Okay. And then from 8 to 9, finishing out the evening, we've got Cindy Johnston and Robert Lee. Yeah. And she'll be doing...
percussion and a variety of instruments. I would guess stringed instruments, guitars and such. So, yeah, come and see Cindy and Robert.
Okay.
They're great. And then on Saturday... there's the Capella Quintet.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm just reading here because
Becky Secor is in this group, and she's a great classically trained oboist and is a music educator from around here, and all is accompanied by Kimberly Contreras, who's a French horn player, Ellen Goodrich, who plays bassoon, and Ramona Glasgow, who plays flute. So it's a nice quartet of woodwind instruments. And it's a classical group from 10 to 11 to wake you up on Saturday morning.
Okay. And then 11 to 12, we've got the Just Having Fun Band. Okay, that's you can't
right.
miss that.
And Betty Stover is on accordion, and Jim Duncan on guitar and vocals, and Wendy Sherman on vocals. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, Tyler Grilly. He played at our hair-raising affair.
Oh.
He'll be there from 12 to 12:30.
He's playing like folk music?
Yeah. So he
guitar.
also does some pretty interesting alternative kinds of instruments,
Cool.
if I'm not
And he's from 12 to 12:30.
Right. Okay, I'll let you pronounce this one.
Tokua
Okay.
from 12:30 to 1, and they play island-type acoustic guitar and vocals. And then the Alpine Chamber Music group with, we have another oboist, a violin, two violinists, a viola, and a cello. So this is like a string quartet. We're actually for a string quartet plus oboe. And that will be great from 1 to 2. So these are great musical groups. They're put together by Joy Hope, who is, I think she's part of the Middle Eastern group.
And part of the chamber.
And part of the chamber group. So on Friday and Saturday. And so please come on out to enjoy the entertainment. What we'd like to do is now, this is Peace and Justice Network, Voice of San Joaquin on KBCC 89.5 FM, Tracy, California, and the Voice of Stockton on KXVS.org. This is Peace and Justice Connections Radio, and we're just going to go through Connections and take a look at the paper, the one that we just finished and we just distributed. And on the front page, there are a couple of big important events because, as we know, there was an election about a month ago, and a lot of things have changed. And one thing that has maybe changed is that some of the issues that Connections is concerned about will actually can be acted upon. It's just up to us to let our legislators know. And one of those issues is gun violence. And on page 1, we're going to be talking about on January 17th, a Thursday, from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Stockton Memorial Civic Auditorium. There's going to be a commemoration for the 30th anniversary of the Cleveland school shooting. And so if anybody was, there may be some people who are listening who were not here back then. But 30 years ago, there was a shooting at Cleveland Elementary School that killed, I believe, 5 children and injured many more. We've had the Cleveland School Remembers group on this show a few times. We'll have them here in January before this event. But anyway, this is a mark your calendar type of thing. It's important.
Right. And if this is an issue that it's dear to your heart, this group, once a month, they are out on the corner of March Lane and Pacific, and that'll be tomorrow night. I think it's right at 5:30. I think it's right at the drive time. And I've gone out with them a few times.
Is that at Weber Plaza? Is that where?
No, this one is at right on the corner of March Lane and Pacific, out in front of the
March Lane and Pacific. Okay.
Yeah, the Target parking lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So so come on out and stand with them. And also what they're asking for here is they are asking for photos of all local shooting victims being sought for the 30th anniversary commemoration. And the contact is 944-1700. There's also some email addresses that are on the in the paper here. So that's on the cover. That's one of the save the dates for next year, because there's going to right now that we're getting into holiday season, and a lot of folks are not going to be focusing on a whole lot of action to be done. But starting in the beginning of the calendar year, we're going to see a lot of things happening, because on the back page of the paper, we're also talking about the Women's March that's going to be happening in Stockton on the 19th, which is just 2 days after the commemoration of Cleveland School. So that's a Saturday, and that will be. You can see the information on the back of the page, but
This is a new young group that is taking responsibility. It's the OWL movement and the Younger Women's Task Force. Along with Third City Coalition.
Very good.
And they wanted to bring it home. We've gone as individuals and small groups up to Sacramento for the first 2 years of the Women's March, and it was very important to them to host this in Stockton so that getting there wasn't a barrier for participation.
Right.
So.
And last year we had a very nice coverage on this very march. It was front page, and it was fresh,
pink.
and we're going to be
very pink.
and we're going to do that again this year, because the march comes on the 19th, and the paper will come out probably on the 22nd, 23rd, or something like that. So we'll have some fresh issues there. Their email address is, not their email address, but their website is www.womensmarchstockton.com. So check that out, and also check out the back page, page 20, which is in the most recent issue of Connections, the orange one. Also on the back page, we can stay there. Annie is also is coming up as a musical.
Well, we're actually 2 weeks into it already.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, it started on November 14th
Okay.
at Stockton Civic Theater.
Very good.
And it is running an extra week. Normally the plays go 4 weeks, the musicals do, but this one they know it's popular, and we've been selling out the houses over there.
Yeah.
And so it's going to go through December 16th. So it's even if you've seen it before, go see it again.
Civic Theater puts on a great show.
A great show, and
Very talented people.
Yes, and this one's just a little different twist probably than what we're used to. There's just it's just very, very well done.
Yeah.
I'm a little biased.
It's a little light entertainment.
Yeah.
And then if
you can't get the songs out of your head.
And if we want to jump to other things that are happening, we can jump back to page 18 and talk about the Sierra Club meetings that are coming up. Monday, December 10th, the Environmental Holiday Gathering, which is that Mom's Chili Boys are showing up there again. And I believe this is a gathering that is both Audubon and the Sierra Club putting their things together, because normally Sierra Club meets on the last Monday of the month, or the fourth Monday, and here they're doing it on December 10th. So it's, I believe that Monday, December 10th, and this is at the Fireside Room in Central United Methodist Church, 3700 Pacific Avenue. And so that's a great holiday gathering to get together with folks, buy your calendars and t-shirts for holiday gift giving, and then to share highlights of the year. And this has been a pretty important year environmentally, and we'll see that in the paper coming up. And then also on Monday, January 28th, these are save the date types of things. There's going to be somebody coming in and talking about Bodie, the Gold Rush ghost town. And then on Monday, February 25th, which is way save the date type of thing, but somebody talking about day hikes along the 108 corridor. And my daughter, Tina, just loves the 108 corridor. So, and we're very saddened by the Donnell fire that burned a lot of up by Clark's Fork and Dardanelles and stuff. But there's a lot of hikes still up there. We went up there recently, and it's still beautiful country up there. So anyway, so that'll be a nice thing to go to in February. So maybe we can start getting into the paper and talking about what we have to be sort of gearing up for. On page 2 is one of the more topical things, because right now we are we're in the midst of a sort of a crisis on our border that is created a manufactured crisis by our current administration that is essentially terrorizing Central American refugees, and who are seeking asylum and is trying to escape the violence that is in their countries right now. And so on this and these articles here, ACLU sues Trump government over asylum ban. And then there's also an article here, a pair of Army Rangers are warning fellow soldiers that Trump is lying, that essentially the people who are coming to our border to claim asylum are not terrorists, are not evildoers, that they are just poor peasants who are trying to escape violence in their countries, and in Honduras and Nicaragua and El Salvador. And if that list of countries sounds familiar, these are countries where we put down popular movements that were designed to empower low-income people. And we in the 1980s, the Reagan administration essentially suppressed and going into even in the Obama administration, where Hillary Clinton sided with a Honduran strongman who ended up essentially heading a coup against the elected Honduran leader. And all of these countries, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, all those countries are now experiencing major gang violence, and where people are afraid for their lives, and they are fleeing. There's 4,000 of them. I'm sure there could be 40,000 of them if they had the same sort of stamina that these folks have to walk all the way across the country of Mexico to get up to Tijuana. And they have a legitimate claim for asylum. And yet our country, led by by Donald Trump, is yet today was shooting tear gas at them. And who knows what'll happen tomorrow. It is unmentionably immoral.
Of seeing children in diapers.
Yeah. Tear gassed.
With tear gas.
Yeah, because there's allegedly terrorists in this group. It is not what the United States stands for. And anyway, so the articles here talk about how the ACLU is suing Trump over the asylum ban, and then and the Army Rangers talking about the fellow soldiers Trump is lying. And unfortunately, I'm afraid that these two articles are going to be relevant for the next 2 months, because I just don't see anything turning aside what is happening down there. Even though now the Democrats are going to be taking over the House of Representatives, I wouldn't expect a whole lot of action. Because on page 3, the headline says, if you want a just world, neither Republicans nor Democrats will give it to you. And essentially what that's saying is that essentially power will not give up anything unless demands are made. And so nobody is going to give a just world to us. What we have to do is we have to earn it. We have to work towards it. And we all work towards an election that turned the tide to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's up to us to make certain that promises are kept.
So emphasis on the word give.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, definitely. Because and so that's a very interesting article, and hopefully it will inspire people to get out and take some action. This is Peace and Justice Connections. I'm Bruce Judici here with Ava Simpson. We're going through Connections, the newspaper. And we're on the Voice of San Joaquin on KBCC 85.9 FM, Tracy, California, and the Voice of Stockton on KXVS.org. On page 4, issues that won't go away, and this was kind of nice because it had a listing of it was nice. It was not a nice list, but it is a well drawn out list that talks about the issues that pretty much Connections has always been concerned about, and which makes our paper fairly consistent in our view. The issues that we're talking about here is, and this is on page 4. Militarism, endless war, unconscionable military spending, and nuclear weapons is A. B is climate change and environmental catastrophe. C is poverty and inequality. D, guns, violence, mass murder, and a culture of violence. E, the militarized police shootings and racism. F, the prison industrial complex. G, immigrant scapegoating, hatred, and fear. And H, voter suppression, gerrymandering, and hacking. And these issues are the issues that we should be focusing on, the Connections will be focusing on in varying ways to make certain that facts that are out there are connected to, are provided to our representatives so that they can act and vote and sponsor legislation that will alleviate some of this stuff. Because we're talking about climate, and there's a lot of issues that people want to start with. Some people want to start with voter suppression, or they want to talk about not on this list. There's nothing here talking about money in campaigns, but there are some people who want to start with that. Climate change, environmental catastrophe is a very pressing issue because every year that we push that down the road is a year where we can't go back to the way it's been, because the environment is forever, in terms of us losing species, losing habitats. Militarism, just listening to the reports today about how many people in Yemen are being in danger of starving because of a war that the United States is supporting. There's a lot of stuff in this article that is could make you just makes you think that winning an election is one thing, but making certain that that our issues and that our voices are heard is quite another.
And the feeling, I think, for so many people is it's overwhelming. There's so much, and how can I possibly make a difference or get involved? And so they turn on their TVs and they just zone out. But not our readers. Our readers are ones that will write the letters or make the phone calls or go to rallies. But I think the only way to get through this is to pick a couple.
Exactly right.
Pick two or three that are your things that you're passionate about. And focus on those. Yeah,
because we know people who are working on climate change. We know folks who are working on guns and violence. We know people who are working on prison industrial complex. Folks who are working on immigrant scapegoating, and they're aware of all of these issues. But what each of those folks who are effective do is they focus on one of these things and make that their primary their primary goal. For me, I want to work on getting this information out to people. And so in terms of working on any one of these individual issues is important. I mean, I like to work on Earth Day because I think that information and getting folks to become aware of how valuable the environment is near and dear to my heart. But I care about all these issues as well, and as does Ava, as does everybody who writes or reads this paper. And so rather than become overwhelmed by any one of these issues, just take a look at one that you're particularly concerned about, find other folks who are like-minded, and get together and do something. Mm-hmm. You know, I wouldn't mind some more local content in terms of writing for the paper, because education is very important. You know, it's the reason why we have the administration we have is because, to my mind, people were ignorant of alternatives that were there, but that were not presented in a way that they felt they could access. And so, you know, in terms of voting for coal mining, or voting for increased military, or voting for, you know, any sorts of things that are not for peace and justice, betrays a lack of imagination and also just a lack of awareness of what alternatives are out there. So this is a very good article because it's sort of like a nice little blueprint of where Connections is going to be going for the next couple of years. On page 5 is normally our healthcare page, and it just discusses Medicare for All, which was the #1 issue that got the Democrats to take back the House. And it was, you know, it wasn't fear mongering or discussing how horrible, you know, Donald Trump is. It was talking about something concrete and something that people really need and that they're concerned about. And right now it's open enrollment time, and people should know, you know, that even though maybe this time around your healthcare premiums are not going up. In fact, where I'm working, our healthcare premiums did not go up significantly. In fact, I think they might have gone back like 1 or 2%. But the packages that we are bundling up for our employees are less rich, as they like to say in the jargon. So they're, instead of a $20 copay, it's a $30 copay. Instead of having to pay 50% deductible, now it's 60%. Or the out of pocket is no longer $7,000, now it's $75,000. Not $7,000, now it's $7,500. And so it may look like their rates have gone down, and they can advertise that look, their premiums have gone down. Still, the coverage is just nasty. I mean, it's really catastrophic coverage. I think I read somewhere recently where somebody was it was at someplace back east. It was like a DeVos clinic or something, where they were saying that, well, you know, you really do need this heart procedure to be done, but you're going to have to go do a GoFundMe for $10,000 in order to pay for the drugs. And it's like, you know, only in America do people have to go do a GoFundMe fundraiser in order to pay for their health care. It's just ludicrous. So anyway, now is the time for Medicare for All. It's it was the #1 issue for folks who won election. I mean, we do have Josh Harder, and now we have McNerney, and so we have people here who have run on these issues. Now it's up to us to make certain that they hear that this is our issue, and this is something that impacts everybody at some point in their lives. You're going to have to deal with Medicare. You're going to have to deal with your medical bills. And for me, as a 61-year-old person, I would love to have Medicare, because right now I am in the highest rate, and you've heard me say this before because I preach about this every time the Medicare folks come on the show. Is, you know, my wife's 61, I'm 61, my 2 daughters are 23, and so to cover our family of 4 cost the company $30,000. $30,000. Yes. And the only reason we can afford it is because the company covers 75% of that, which is very generous. Most companies only pay for the employee, and then you're on your own for your dependents. And this is $30,000. I mean, that's most people's income. Yeah. It's like there's just rampant abuse, and we can talk about it when we have the Medicare for All people on, and we're going to have them on in January, because there's going to be a chance, I believe, for people to make this an issue. And a lot of folks are saying, oh, we don't really want to push Medicare for All because, that's just too strident and that's too much out there. It's really what people want. Mm-hmm. It's the people are tired of being scared of getting sick.
That's it.
And then League of Women Voters, we had Susan Morloiko over. She wrote this article, which is very nice, about the busy election season and how they recruited, or they registered a bunch of young voters. Right. I think it was like 1,400 or something. It was quite a few. It says 860, but actually it was supposed to be 1,400. Yeah. There was an edit that didn't quite make it. But anyway, it was quite a few folks in their registration, and voting is so important. It was great to see so many people vote this last time around. It means that maybe our voices are going to be heard. And then the pages that speak to our military. The amount of money that we waste on military. That on page 6 is talking about the global war on terror has killed at this point 500,000 folks. And we're talking about in Afghanistan and Pakistan from 2001 to 2018, and Iraq from 2003 to 2018. So the America's global war on terror kills 500,000. This is very well sourced. It's a report from Brown University's Watson Institute. It's an academic report, and it does detail about how many folks have been killed, U.S. military, and then other people in different countries. 500,000 people. And this is our response to the 9/11 terrorism attack, is that they kill 3,000 of ours, we kill 500,000 of other people. And so this is what happens when emotion overtakes thought, and it's just astounding that we are still at war in Afghanistan. 2001 is when that started. Here we are, 2018. So somebody who's 17 years old has never known a time when this country has not been at war. So they just think that war is common. It's like 1984 or something, where we're always at war. We have to keep on feeding the machine, and there is no end in sight on this Afghanistan war. So you hear once in a while you'll hear a claim of somebody being an American being killed, or a car bomb going off in a different in a town in Afghanistan. It's just not on the headlines. It's not a news story anymore. It's just background.
Yeah, these numbers are mind-boggling.
They're astounding. They are just astounding. I mean, we're talking about 480 to 507,000 people. In Iraq alone, 268 to 295,000 people. Civilians in Iraq, 182,000 to 204,000 people. That's maybe half or 2/3 of the size of Stockton gone. On page 7, why aren't more young people involved in the anti-war movement? And they just discuss some counterpoints as to we're not at risk, it doesn't feel worth the effort, how do we engage young people in anti-war activism? And so it was it's an interesting article, and how we, as we know, young people now are engaged in protest in ways that are different than when Ava and I were young, but still the issues are still there, and maybe the anti-war movement has to move in a different way, in a way that involves and engages young people, so that people feel like they're connected. Because unfortunately,
yeah, I'm seeing encouraging things on a local front, and that young people are making their community better, and that's where it starts.
Yeah.
But it does surprise me that they're not more outraged
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
what's going on as far as wars.
Well, it's and you know,
Maybe because there's not drafts.
not a draft, yeah,
That's
and
why.
you know that's and my daughter was asking me about why there's what was so special about 1968 and well 50 years ago, and it was because there was a draft and because people's friends were being called up and they did not. It wasn't their
choose to
choice.
go.
It was
Right.
not their choice.
Right.
And not only that, it was unfair in that some people who normal people got pulled up, but people who could figure out the system on how to get deferred, or who were well off, or who were the sons and daughters of, or sons really at that point, sons of people who were influential, senators. I mean, there's a whole Creed song about I'm no senator's son. It's some anti-war songs because it wasn't fair. People who, there were folks who fought and died, and people who fought over there and came back very traumatized, people live with that today. And so I don't know that it, in those families where the people who are traumatized, it made them anti-war, but it sure did wake people up to the real long-term effects of war. And so, we just have to keep on educating and, talking about these sorts of issues, I think. And then we're on the bottom page, a new plasma weapon in the U.S. anti-protest arsenal. It's a pretty disturbing article about a weapon that the United States, that the Pentagon is testing out, that at low levels produces will warn people up to 1,000 meters away, delivering voice messages. When it gets closer, there's a acoustic blast that will disable people's hearing. Then they have flash blind effects at 100 meters, and the highest setting talks about full scalable thermal ablative effects, which is talking about vaporizing the outer layer of skin rather than burning it. So this is, sort of like it's a plasma weapon, and so not necessarily that it would be used on American protesters, but I can imagine that across, overseas, this would be a very popular weapon in a very authoritarian country, which, we seem to have no problem supplying the weapons to. So this is Peace and Justice Connections. I'm Bruce Judici with Ava Simpson. We're going through the Connections newspaper. It might be a nice time now to talk about vendors that are at our Peaceful Holiday Fair, which on November 30th and December 1st at Central United Methodist, we are going to be from 4 to 9 on Friday and from 10 to 4 on Saturday. We're going to be, it's the Peaceful Holiday Fair, it's the 31st annual.
Right.
And so you have some folks who...
I made a couple of quick notes off of the list of vendors. And I think we've got about 35 tables. Some of those vendors take more than one table. So I'm guessing we have 25 vendors.
Right.
I've gone as just an attendee for several years. It's always a great event. You're gonna get nice homemade goods, things that you don't see at other boutiques. A couple that stand out. In fact, I'm wearing some beads that
those paper beads.
I buy these. These are paper beads, and I get compliments on these all the time.
Yeah,
These are
cool.
they'll be there. We'll have quilts. We'll have some succulents, some scented gifts. There'll be one booth that does California native flowers and seeds. Will be there. Lots of jewelry. There's another one I remember. One of my favorites was one who takes recycled glass and paper, glass and plates, and stacks them and makes interesting
right.
repurposed
Yeah, that's right.
items out of those.
Yeah,
Those are, in fact, I've started doing my own version of those for my garden. It's a great look. We've also got some metal objects. A good friend of mine, Sally Edmonds, will be out there for. She's got all kinds of little sayings and plaques and seasonal things. She customizes it for and some chalk art. Let's see. Glenda Burns is another one that I'm familiar with. She does pottery and some dyed scarves that are
beautiful.
They are beautiful.
Yeah,
I have both. Lots of her pottery. Yeah. Others that I can speak from experience on. The gluten-free lady, Angie, will be out there with baked goods, all gluten-free.
And of course, we're going to have our vegetarian soups all day.
Yeah.
And that's on both days, I mean. And those are fantastic, and those things directly benefit the Peace and Justice Network. And so this is an event that is one of our fundraisers. And it's a great time to get out and meet folks who you may not have seen in a while. Whenever I go, I see all my friends. And it's just a lot of fun. It's a good time to get out and to see each other. And I hear that the weather is going to be fantastic on Friday and Saturday in between storms.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
You put in a special
request? I did. I put an order in, like with Earth Day. We always put an order in for. And Earth Day, just while we're speaking of it, April 14th this year, a Sunday. We're going to be doing that on 2019, the 31st annual, and so that's going to be a lot of fun. So, so the Peaceful Holiday Fair is Friday from 4 to 9 at Central United Methodist, 3700 Pacific Avenue, across from the Burns Tower at UOP. And then the next day from 10 to 4 at the same place. So anyway, so that's going to be a lot of fun. This is Peace and Justice Connections. I'm Bruce Giudice. This is Ava Simpson, and we're going through the most recent Connections issue. So, on page 8, we're talking about students across the nation fighting for free college for all. And this is another issue that that people who were running for Congress, that they promised, or they said that they were going to work on. We're talking about tuition free for college, and we know that in California, I believe, for community college, I think that is going to be that's the case. But right now, we do have, there's a supermajority of Democrats in both houses of California's legislature, and Gavin Newsom is a newly elected Democratic governor. And so if we are talking about a fight for free college for all, we can talk about, the college system here. We start with the community colleges, but then we can talk about community college, or we can talk about state colleges, and we can talk about the university. Because when I went to UC Davis, the registration fee, no tuition, was $212.50, $212.50. So for me to go to Davis for 1 year was $700. They were in quarter system, $750 for registration fees, and then I had to come up with housing. That was a public school. That's what it means to go to a public school. It means that the public pays for it, and that people who live in the state are able to go to it and not have to worry about coming out of school with a $30,000 a year debt. And so this is an issue that a lot of here we say in the first line here says 44 million people in the United States owe nearly $1.5 trillion in student debt. A total that grows larger every day. 1.5 trillion. That's 1,500 million or billion. Billion. Yeah, that's a lot. And 44 million. Yeah, put a lot of zeros. But it's and we're not talking about private school. We're talking about public schools. And so this article talks about students across the nation fighting for free college for all. But it shouldn't just be students, because the students of today are the folks who are going to be leading and taking care of this economy 30 or 40 years ago. I mean, 30 or 40 years from now. And so this is like an investment in the future. This is an investment in the future. And so when people say that we can't afford this, we'll say, well, how can we afford, trillions of dollars of tax cuts to corporations who are right now? I just heard today that
they're laying off.
Yeah, that General Motors is laying off a lot of people. And how can we afford a military spending that has killed 500,000 people since 2000 and has not bought us any more security than we had back then? This is an issue that rightfully has taken the place of a lot of the hating that went on in the campaign. And so this is something that you ought to read about it. It's an important issue, and it's something that we can do something about in the same way as Medicare for All. At the bottom of this page is Voices of Homeless People, and Fred Muscal. He goes to St. Mary's dining room once a month and gathers these stories, and they are a different perspective on our world. That's the truth, and I think everybody should read all of these. Yeah. They're just interesting.
They are. These are written by folks that go to St. Mary's, and he gives them a writing outlet.
Yeah.
And they get to.
Yeah, and so we've been able to put this in our paper for, I think this is like the third time maybe.
I think so. Yeah.
So throughout this last year, so like every other issue, we get the voices from the homeless folks, and it's a very important voice. On page 9, ending toxic pollution and cleaning up Superfund sites. We're talking about Livermore Lab over by Tracy. This is the voice of San Joaquin on KBCC 89.5 FM, Tracy, California, and the voice of Stockton on KXVS.org. And this is talking about ending toxic pollution and cleaning up Superfund sites. In particular, here we're talking about Site 300, where a lot of detonation devices have been set off, and you got to read this article and it talks about how we can try to put people's feet to the fire. The folks who are doing this are Tri-Valley Cares, which is a fantastic organization. You got to check them out. www.trivalleycares.org. They're very nice. They do good work. Maria Kelly and the gang. And then on page 2000, on page 10 and 11, on page 2018 highlights, and this is these are the pages that Ava particularly put together. And so what they have?
Well, these are photos taken by one of the Peace and Justice Network board members, Gloria Fern, and they're kind of a recap of some of the bigger events that Peace and Justice Network was involved in during the year. So we've got ones that go back to their annual meeting, February 25th of this year. Yeah, we had that, and then we had Earth Day and the March for Science. And then this is one that I don't think I was able to participate
and it wasn't Peace and Justice it wasn't a Peace and Justice Justice Network event.
It was they
participated. But a lot of our people were out there.
Right. Yeah, and it was the Families Belong Together. It was the protest against families being separated.
And that was in June.
That was in June. And then we one more photo essay of some of the hair-raising affair highlights too.
Which was a fantastic fundraising effort that Ava spearheaded and raised over $4,000 for the network. Thank you very much, Ava. And then there's a nice big thank you.
Yes, another thank you for the people that were there that day.
And that's wonderful. It was a great event. Yeah. And now we go on to page 12 and 13, which is our environmental page. Actually, page 12 is our sustainable agriculture page, and the top talks about to spray or not to spray, and it's talking about, when you're talking about an organic farm, a lot of people say, well, we shouldn't ever spray pesticides, but there's also an idea that you don't necessarily never spray. It's just that you spray only when you need to. And so that's what Shane is discussing here, is how do we make certain that our organic farm or organic garden does not suffer from pests that come from neighboring fields and destroy our crop. And how do we deal with that? Do we just let the bugs eat all of our crop, or do we spray? And so that's a interesting article.
Yep.
And then on the bottom was a part of the election, talking about Prop 12, which is the world's strongest animal welfare law. And so it just discusses how cows and chickens and I think pigs are now going to be allowed to have more free space to live in rather than what they had before. And so it's a very strong animal welfare law. It was sort of controversial because some very strongly vegan and vegetarian groups, PETA and Friends of Animals, were against this because they believe that there shouldn't be any cows or animals being served for slaughter. But in the world we live in, this is a step in the right direction, and that's what we have to look at. So that was good.
We're
almost to the end.
almost at the end.
On page 13, we're talking about environmental stuff. Talking about on the bottom of the page, talking about climate change and how it's very important to keep the pressure up because we are in danger. It's getting closer and closer. A lot of the models are showing that things are melting faster. So take a look at that. And then Trump administration declaring war on the Delta to help to save GOP House seats, and that talks about being pro-tunnel and making certain or trying to keep people from being able to sue against anti-environmental water grabs from agricultural interests in the South Valley. And then on page 14 and 15 is a longish article, but it comes from the Sierra Club, and it discusses based on the election results, what does it mean for the climate and the environment? And it's very interesting because what it does is it goes through governorships and state houses, talks about the House, talks about House of Representatives, and what initiatives would happen in those two places, what happened with respect to some propositions that were pro-environment, and what happened to them nationwide, and then talking about a climate caucus in the House of Representatives. So it's an interesting read. You may not be able to read it all at once, but I mean, it's like 2,000 words, which is a long one. Yeah. But really, I think the knowing where people stand is going to be real important. On page 16, challenge to the new blue Congress, govern as progressives, and this is an article from Norman Solomon, who normally writes really well, and he's writing really well here. It's essentially challenging a Congress to act boldly on the issues we've been talking about tonight, and not just to go milquetoast and try to appeal to the lowest common denominator. And then on page 17, Trump's only election strategy was racism, and that just goes without saying. Then we go to page 19. We already talked about the Sierra Club happenings, and then the talent of there's going to be a holiday fair, and then the calendar. Yes.
Can I give a shout out?
Oh, please.
Yes. One of the things we've been trying to do was get more of a team of people to do the layout for Connections. So we approached the InDesign class and the graphics class at Delta College, Melody Marshall's class there, and Bruce and I made a couple of presentations, and we recruited 2 students from there, and then we took one of our own guys. So I'd like to thank Myra Mesa and Phil Vaughn and Scott Sargent for their help. We put it together just in the last 2-3 weeks.
And Ava Simpson, and it was a fun thing.
We came together and we just figured out how we could divide this up and make it a learning experience and get new ideas and different skill sets involved. And so watch for good things. And I'm real pleased with just how well they stepped up and how well we work together.
And once again, we're all volunteer. We're all doing this, pulling this together.
Yeah.
Ava pulled this together just great. It was quite a team effort. It's a great way to end the year. This is the Voice of San Joaquin on KBCC 89.5, Tracy, California, and the Voice of Stockton on KXVS.org. This is Peace and Justice Connections here with Ava Simpson, Bruce Judice, your host. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening.